The second generation of the rugged crossover was built on the Nissan C platform, on the basis of which more than a dozen models of Nissan and its friendly Renault were built: Megane, Scenic, Koleos, Kangoo, Fluence, Qashqai, Sentra, Maxima. X-Trail was produced only as a 5-door station wagon 3 years after the start of production. The model underwent restyling, during which the front and rear optics, front bumper and fog lights were retouched. In the cabin, the instrument panel with an information display has been slightly modified. The car actually has better cross-country ability compared to many other SUVs, and in this discipline it can give a head start to many of them. The energy-intensive suspension with long strokes contributes to a confident ride outside of smooth roads. The X-Trail body initially resists corrosion well, but the youngest X-Trails are already 10 years old today, and this cannot be ignored. Even the youngest cars have corrosion. First of all, rust appears on the trunk lid, under the license plate frame and along its entire surface, as well as on the windshield frame, for example, under the aerodynamic lining near the hood, which also wears the paint down to metal. Even on not very old, decent-looking cars, you can find corrosion not yet on the bottom but under the plastic lining of the wheel arches. But over the years, the body also rots from below, where the subframe is attached to the side members and where the power parts of the chassis are attached to the body itself. To prevent this from happening, the first owner had to clean off small pockets of rust in promising places every couple of years and renew the layer of protective materials. In addition, the marks of time that are typical for any model do not disappear anywhere: rust spots on chipped paintwork throughout the body, places where roof rails are attached, and, in fact, all hidden cavities of the body such as thresholds. I have good news for you. Now, if you are planning to buy a used car, or learn more about your car, you no longer need to search for the information you need on the internet. We have collected everything in one place for you, on the website carme.pro. Here you can find out everything about the car, what breaks and at what mileage, any problems with engines, chassis or gearboxes, which trim levels are better not to mess with, and how not to lose money buying a used car. You will learn all this on carme.pro. Another oddity can be attributed to the proprietary features of the Nissan X-Trail's body. Despite the powerful off-road charisma of this model, its rear bumper seems to be deliberately designed in such a way as to scoop into itself, like a loader bucket, everything that comes across off-road: snow, sand, debris, small branches, and everything else that the car encounters on the ground. In general, a torn bumper is not necessarily a sign of the previous owner's passion for off-road driving. Perhaps he just had a bad trip to mushrooms. The second-generation Nissan X-Trail has the instrument panel in its usual place, unlike its predecessor, where the panel was in the center of the dashboard. At the same time, the model has retained all the elements of small amenities. Inside there are a lot of pockets of different sizes, niches and glove compartments. And in the area of the legs, everything is covered with plastic, which is easy and quick to clean, which confirms the wide functionality of the car. Even dirt is not a problem. Visibility can only be criticized during lateral maneuvers. It is slightly limited by the wide B-pillars and rear pillars. The ease of getting in and out of the rear seat is affected by the doorway narrowed at the bottom, but the comfort of the seat itself is enhanced by a large range of adjustments to the angle of the backrests. There are as many as 5 fixed positions. There is not much legroom or headroom, but the central tunnel of the body is also low, so there is enough space in the back for people slightly taller than average. Time and hundreds of thousands of kilometers traveled, of course, accumulate complaints about interior equipment. It all starts with failures of the air conditioning compressor and problems with the drive of locks from the inside door handles. More often in frosty weather, the cables jump off their fixation points, which makes it impossible to open the door from the inside. The finishing materials, in fact, like the entire car, are not very expensive, so they wear out quite quickly. Approximately as quickly, by 100 to 150,000 kilometers, the heater fan on new cars was given up, and officially it could only be replaced as an assembly with the stove. A typical problem with cars with a mileage of 150,000 kilometers is the failure of the buttons on the steering wheel. Replacing the cable solves the problem. Another little thing noticeable from behind the wheel is the incorrect operation of the fuel level indicator. The reason is oxides on the tracks of the rheostat sensor, but electricians say that cleaning, if it helps, does not last long. But an important advantage of the X-Trail is the double trunk floor. In the underground there are convenient niches for various small things, on the right side in the form of a drawer, and when you fold the rear seat, you get a perfectly flat cargo area. While the X-Trail's trunk is one of the most functional among its competitors, its travel volume of 480 liters is one of the smallest among its competitors. Mitsubishi Outlander XL 774 liters and Toyota RAV4 500 liters. But with the rear seats folded down, the compartment is one of the largest, 1,775 liters versus 1,691 liters and 1,469 liters, respectively. There are not many engines in the second-generation X-Trail engine line. All are naturally aspirated and 4-cylinder, 2.5 petrol, 2.0 petrol, 2.0 diesel. The most common are petrol versions with a 2.0-liter unit, and the least common are diesel modifications. Although the share of turbo diesels is increasing, because they are imported from Europe. From birth all engines are reliable, typically weak points are either absent or do not coincide with those generally accepted on engines of competing companies. The timing chain lasts a long time, there are no problems with individual ignition coils and a variable valve timing system. There are no hydraulic compensators in the timing belt and the thermal valve clearances are theoretically adjustable, but in practice this only had to be done when repairing the cylinder head. In the early years of X-Trail, the biggest complaint about the 2.0-liter gasoline engine, especially when paired with a CVT, was its considerable fuel appetite, reaching 13.0 to 14.0 liters per 100 in the urban cycle. Moreover, in terms of these characteristics, it is similar to its 2.5-liter brother, which fits into the same indicators due to the better torque/weight ratio of the car. At the same time, the larger unit differs in dynamics 10.3s to 100 km per hour versus 11.9s, respectively. True, owners of 2.0-liter versions after restyling claim that such cars are more economical, their fuel consumption is lower 10.0 to 11.0 liters. Alas, despite the natural desire of owners to compensate for the gluttony of gasoline engines, specialists from a branded service station strongly recommend not installing gas equipment on the X-Trail. The trouble is that Nissan engines do not digest gas well due to overheating, valve seats, and the valves themselves often burn. The generally explainable complexity has a solution. For trouble-free operation on gas fuel, it is necessary to increase the thermal clearances of the valves. But to set them up, it is necessary to install other adjustment cups, which is associated with hassle and expense. In well-preserved cars, gasoline engines give only characteristic minor problems: loss of tightness of the front engine cover after 100,000 kilometers, contamination of the throttle valve over time, which is why the idle speed of the power unit floats, cleaning is required, as well as premature, earlier 150,000 kilometers, timing chain puller. But gasoline engines also have global disadvantages. The first owners of second-generation gasoline Nissan X-Trails were surprised by the short life of the exhaust gas converter, which sometimes did not reach 50 to 60,000 kilometers. It was not difficult for many domestic owners to throw it away forever, but ceramic dust from the destroyed honeycomb of the catalyst was swallowed into the cylinders and killed the piston. Therefore, when purchasing, it is very important to find out whether the engine suffers from oil leaks, and if so, then the reason may be scratched cylinder walls. That is, such an engine will face serious repairs in the near future. The oil level may also drop due to a leak from under the pan, which loses its joint tightness due to the sealant drying out. On older Nissan X-Trail gasoline engines, you need to constantly monitor the level of antifreeze in the system, since there are places where the coolant likes to escape. First of all, these are the thermostat and the expansion tank. Cracks in the cylinder head also occur. The 2.0-liter diesel engine on the second-generation Nissan X-Trail, jointly developed with Renault, has a common rail power system and naturally turbocharging. The engine is good, especially if it was fed with high-quality fuel. True, service workers strongly do not recommend washing this unit. When washing, water gets between the fuel injectors and the cylinder head, resulting in electrochemical corrosion, and over time the injectors fail. At the same time, great difficulties arise with their dismantling. Some examples of the 2.0-liter turbo diesel showed a problem typical of other diesel Nissans, in particular, the Navara/NP300. The engine does not like high speeds, due to which the crankshaft journals experienced oil starvation with such a sad ending as cranking of the main liners. The engine ECU software updated in 2013 protects it from such a major problem. Finally, a problem that is typical for other Nissan diesel models, and not only this one, is the particulate filter in the exhaust, which gets clogged ahead of schedule on cars that rarely go on country roads. The proprietary Nissan all-mode 4x4 transmission with an electronically controlled center clutch has 3 modes, which the driver selects with a convenient rotary control. In standard modes, to save fuel, you can drive in front-wheel drive, 2WD mode. On wet, dirt or snowy roads, it is recommended to drive in auto mode. When the front wheels slip, the rear wheels automatically engage. To overcome difficult areas, you can use the lock all-wheel drive mode by locking the clutch. In this case, the torque from the engine is distributed equally between the axles, and at 40 km/h the transmission switches to auto mode. Secondly, 3 types of gearboxes were offered for this car: manual, classic automatic and CVT. The most common versions are those with CVT, and the least common is the classic automatic transmission. The manual transmission on the second-generation X-Trail is reliable in itself, but it is paired with the notorious dual-mass flywheel, which costs a lot of money at Nissan. Service mechanics say that this manual model is not the best option, since its clutch does not like sudden starts with delayed pedaling and slipping in mud or snow. In addition to the clutch itself, in such situations the aforementioned flywheel may also suffer. The Jatco brand variator on the X-Trail is not the weakest known. Moreover, it belongs to those generations of CVT that were still quite reparable. In modern times, its service life to the capital is not small, 150 to 200,000 kilometers, but this is if the owner did not often start in the gas to the floor mode and did not stone curbs from a standstill, resting his front wheels on them. The torque converter automatic on the X-Trail 2 is also made by Jatco. It was combined exclusively with a diesel engine. Perhaps this is the most successful transmission option for this car. The gearbox is quite successful, capable of lasting more than 200,000 kilometers before repair. True, for this you need to regularly, every 60,000 kilometers, change the oil and prevent it from overheating during operation. The transmission units responsible for all-wheel drive do not create any special problems for the owner ahead of time. But here its increased off-road index plays a cruel joke on the car. Some motorists still use it for heavy off-road rides. Because of this, the 4x4 coupling becomes unusable. It does not work either automatically or forcibly, and the shaft joints break. If you have suspicions about this, it is worth checking when purchasing whether water has gotten into the drive axles, more precisely, whether the transmission oil has been changed in them after that. The suspension and chassis of the X-Trail as a whole are more off-road than asphalt. It is soft and has a high energy intensity. This allows a fairly heavy car to drive confidently on rough roads and off-road. The other side of this coin is that at speed on uneven surfaces the car sways strongly, and during active maneuvering, despite 2 anti-roll bars, unpleasant body roll occurs. From the point of view of the diagram, the chassis is not poor. There is a McPherson in front, and a multi-link in the rear. Moreover, experts note the special strength of the rear, and it really lasts 200 to 250,000 kilometers, despite the fact that the front has to be repaired much more often. The support bearings of the front struts can become unusable after 50,000 kilometers, the rear silent blocks of the front levers at 60 to 70,000 kilometers, and the rear silent blocks of the front subframe, ball joints and front wheel bearings are changed around 80,000 kilometer. Consumables for the front stabilizer last 30,000 kilometers, bushings, and 60,000 kilometers, struts, and for the rear stabilizer 50 and 90,000 kilometers, respectively. At the same time, the cost of servicing the front end is reduced by separate replacement of most consumables. The X-Trail's steering is equipped with electric power steering. This unit is generally problem-free and durable. The tips and rods can extend up to 150,000 kilometers. But on older cars, the steering shaft, drive shaft in the cabin, and the shock absorber protection begin to sound, but both problems are easily solvable. Yes, the Nissan X-Trail is the most off-road of the models created at the intersection of the SUV and city station wagon classes. Therefore, it can be safely recommended to a city dweller who has, if not off-road ambitions, then a dacha outside the city. But the age of the second-generation X-Trail will definitely show itself, so you need to be prepared for some hassle and repair costs. At best, you will be able to find a well-preserved specimen that will not require attention for another couple of years.